It's my first time. The millionaire couldn't believe it. And what he did changed everything. Morning broke over San Francisco beneath a heavy fog. No rain fell, yet the sky seemed swollen with unshed grief. From a distance, the blades of a helicopter cut sharply through the silence, the sound growing until a sleek black aircraft emerged, gliding across the skyline like a restless shadow. Inside, Adrian Hale, 38, sat motionless, eyes locked on the misty glass. The pale morning light reflected against his sharp features, every line of his face etched with discipline. He adjusted the cuff of his white shirt, a ritual gesture that failed to mask the tension pressing at the corners of his mind. How many towers down there bear my name? How many projects still unfinished? And when it's all complete, what will it mean? His thoughts pressed in like whispers. Choktikos, would my father be proud if he were alive? Or would he see nothing but glass monuments, cold and hollow, built from dreams I abandoned? The pilot's voice cut through his headset, anchoring him back. Mr. Hale, preparing to land. Adrian gave a slight nod. No reply. His gaze lingered on the city below, where millions of people rushed after status, money, survival. Unlike them, he was already at the summit. Yet from this altitude, all he felt was silence, an emptiness that echoed louder than any crowd. The helicopter eased down onto the roof of Hale Tower, the tallest structure in his empire. Adrian stepped out, each stride precise, exuding a confidence that could have been carved from marble. The faint sun pierced through clouds, brushing across the threads of his Italian overcoat, rendering him both commanding and distant, like a figure out of some financial folklore. Waiting near the helipad was Maya, his executive assistant, holding a steaming coffee and a stack of folders. "Any changes to today's schedule?" Adrian asked, eyes scanning papers he didn't need. "The Tokyo investors rescheduled to 3 p.m., Maya answered, then hesitated. "And your mother called. She said it was important." Adrian paused mid-step. "Tell her I'm busy." Maya lowered her gaze, her voice softening. "She said you'd say that. But today is your father's memorial." Adrian's eyes closed. 1 second. 2. When they opened, they were sharp again, armored in control. Without another word, he moved toward the elevator. In Adrian Hale's world, emotions were liabilities. The past was a burden meant to be abandoned, left behind on the relentless climb toward the top. That evening, the lights of the Pacific Grand Hotel shimmered against the bay, illuminating the 35th birthday celebration of Isabel, wife of Daniel, the only true friend Adrian still kept through years of ambition and distance. The guest list sparkled. Business leaders, politicians, artists, soft jazz floated through the air. Champagne glasses gleamed beneath chandeliers. The party was a flawless portrait of San Francisco's elite. Adrian arrived late, as always. A navy blazer fitted perfectly, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his version of casual, yet radiating authority. Without effort, he drew eyes the moment he stepped inside. A few nods, polite handshakes, hollow conversations. The same faces, the same words. Nothing real, Adrian thought, drifting through the room like a cold breeze. "You made it." Daniel appeared, carrying 2 flutes of champagne. Isabel was starting to think you forgot her birthday. Adrian allowed the faintest smile. "Impossible. She's the only woman who ever managed to tame you." They both laughed. Daniel gestured toward a corner of the room. "She's with her art crowd. Murals, reclaimed wood, the usual. You know her." Adrian nodded absent-mindedly, his attention slipping elsewhere. And then he saw her, among the glitter and chatter. a young woman in a simple black dress and white shirt, hair tied neatly in a low bun. No heavy makeup, no glittering jewelry. She moved quietly among the guests, tray balanced in her hands, offering hors d'oeuvres with a gentle smile. Everything about her seemed out of place in this polished scene. And yet, it was precisely that simplicity that made her impossible to overlook. Adrian tilted his head slightly toward Daniel. "Who is she?" Daniel followed his gaze, then chuckled. "Clara Moreno, event staff, graduate student in urban planning at Stanford." "Urban planning?" Adrian repeated softly, his tone laced with interest. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Adrian didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on Clara, every movement, every quiet gesture. There was something there, something unpolished, unguarded. A light he rarely found in rooms like this. The music still hummed, the chandeliers still glittered. But Adrian's mind had already left the party the moment his eyes met Clara's. Among dozens of carefully painted faces, dazzling dresses, and hollow conversations, it was the young woman in plain attire who captured his attention more than anyone else. It wasn't just beauty, though Clara possessed a quiet, natural grace. It was her presence, the way she moved, the way she offered each guest a small, unforced smile. There was a calmness about her, as though she belonged to another world, a world Adrian realized he had long forgotten. Daniel handed him a glass of champagne. "What are you staring at?" Adrian smiled faintly, disguising his gaze. "Just something interesting." Clara continued her work, passing through the room like a cool breeze in suffocating air. Adrian felt his pulse quicken, a sensation he hadn't known in years. He wanted to know more, but he knew the moment wasn't right. That night, back at his penthouse, Clara's image lingered. He stood by the window, watching the city blaze with light. Yet for the first time, those lights brought no satisfaction. "I've seen hundreds of faces, signed thousands of deals. So why is it that one ordinary smile won't leave me alone?" The next day, Adrian tried to bury himself in work. Reports, calls, emails, but the words blurred on the screen. All he could see were Clara's steady eyes. Late in the afternoon, Isabel called. Her voice teased. "I knew you'd ask, but let me save you the trouble. The cafe where Clara works is called Café Mariposa Mission District, and don't bother pretending you're not curious." Adrian let out a small laugh, though his chest tightened. "Ridiculous, but I have to see her again." The following afternoon, he parked in front of the cafe. It was small, warm, worlds apart from the high-end restaurants he frequented, a chalkboard sign at the door, the air rich with roasted beans. Customers mostly students with laptops and books. Adrian stepped inside, his tailored suit making him an obvious outsider. Behind the counter, Clara worked the espresso machine. When she looked up and saw him, surprise flickered across her face. "You..." She tilted her head slightly. "You were at the party, weren't you?" Adrian stepped forward, offering his hand. "That's right. Adrian Hale. Clara Moreno." She shook his hand lightly, then withdrew. "One espresso, please." The drink appeared quickly. $5. Adrian slid a 50 across. Clara frowned. "I don't take oversized tips. Call it a thank you for that night." "Still too much." She pushed the bill back, accepting only a 10. Adrian's smile lingered. "Are you always this principled?" Clara's lips curved. "Only with men who wear $3,000 suits to order espresso." Adrian laughed. A genuine laugh, rare even for himself. As he turned to leave, he paused, eyes meeting hers. Let's hope I'm thirsty again tomorrow." Clara said nothing, but a faint blush colored her cheeks. The next day, Adrian returned to Café Mariposa, still in a suit, though this time with his collar open, hair less rigid. He hadn't come for coffee. He had come because the thought of her had followed him through 2 sleepless nights. Clara was wiping down the counter. When she saw him, her brows lifted. "Back again? Another $3,000 espresso?" Adrian chuckled. "Maybe today I'll try a vanilla latte." She studied him, half teasing, half curious. "Do you really have time to wander the city sampling coffee shops?" He paused. "No. I came because I wanted to ask you something." Her hands stilled. "What?" "You study urban planning, don't you?" Adrian's voice lowered. "I want your perspective on a new project. If you're free after your shift, I could show you." Clara blinked, surprised. A top real estate CEO seeking input from a graduate student? She considered saying no, but his eyes held a sincerity that disarmed her. After a moment, she nodded. "All right, I have a couple of hours." That afternoon, Adrian's car pulled up to Aurora, his newly completed glass tower on the bay. The facade shimmered in the setting sun. The marble lobby gleamed. Diffusers perfumed the air. Clara walked slowly, taking it all in. "It's impressive. A 2-bedroom here sells for about $3 million, Adrian said automatically, his tone still carrying the polish of a salesman. Clara's hand brushed across the cold marble countertop. "Do you want me to be honest?" "Always." "It's beautiful, yes, but it feels soulless. Not a design flaw, just a feeling. Too perfect, too polished, like something meant to be displayed, not lived in." Her words echoed through the pristine emptiness. Adrian stood silent, unprepared for such blunt truth. At last he nodded. "I thought you might say that. There's somewhere else I want to show you." The car crossed the bridge into Oakland. There, instead of a gleaming tower, stood a weathered 4-story building, paint chipped, railings rusted. Yet when they stepped into the courtyard, Clara heard laughter of children, smelled the warmth of dinner cooking, saw flowers planted along the fences. "This was my first project 10 years ago," Adrian said slowly. 40 units, affordable housing. Clara's expression softened as she looked around. "It's nothing like Aurora. This place breathes. It has people, life." Adrian's smile was tinged with regret. "Back then, all I wanted was to build homes for people who didn't have any. My father was a carpenter. He used to say, 'A house isn't just shelter. It's where hope begins.'" Clara fell quiet, eyes following a family gathered at their dinner table by an open window. "And then you forgot that?" "Money, investors, profit margins. They pulled me away." "Do you regret it?" Adrian said nothing. Children's laughter echoed through the yard. Finally, he nodded. "Lately, yes." They sat on an old wooden bench in the courtyard. The air carried scents of food and earth. Clara removed her glasses, tilting her face toward the violet sky. "I study planning because I believe small spaces can change lives. I don't want to design places where only the wealthy belong." Adrian turned, his gaze meeting hers, unguarded, stripped of his CEO armor. "Maybe I need to remember why I started." Clara smiled faintly. "Then remember." In that stillness, no further words were needed. Both knew something had shifted, beginning here in this modest place. Ever since the trip to Oakland, Adrian was no longer the same. He still ran his company with relentless discipline, still appeared at meetings on time with his familiar cold presence. But inside, a door had been opened. and Clara was the one who had quietly walked through it. They began seeing each other more often. At first, just a few minutes at Café Mariposa, then walks around Mission District. Later, small exhibits on architecture and planning. Adrian found himself enjoying these modest evenings far more than the lavish parties he used to endure. With Clara, he didn't have to be the CEO. He could simply be a man. Clara, too, saw a different Adrian. He had a discerning eye for space, listened carefully, and asked questions that made her reflect more deeply on her own dreams. He was no longer the untouchable figure on magazine covers, but a man searching for meaning. One evening, they strolled beneath warm streetlights, the breeze carrying scents of food from nearby carts. Clara pulled her scarf tighter. Without a word, Adrian draped his coat over her shoulders. She looked up, surprised. "Aren't you cold?" "No." He smiled softly. "Because you're here." In that moment, the distance between them dissolved. Adrian leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle, unhurried, a silent promise that something precious had begun. A few days later, Clara accepted his invitation to visit his penthouse. From the balcony, the city stretched out in dazzling lights. Inside, the apartment gleamed with flawless luxury, every detail immaculate to the point of sterility. Clara walked slowly, brushing her fingers against a wall. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Then, after a pause, "But it feels more like a hotel than a home." Adrian turned, taken aback. "Why do you say that?" "Because it's missing you," Clara said. "It's too perfect, too polished, like a place meant to be displayed, not lived in." Her words lingered. Adrian poured her a glass of wine, settling beside her. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I've forgotten myself." "When was the last time you truly felt happy?" Clara asked softly. He stared out at the artificial stars of the city lights. "I don't remember." Clara laid her hand gently over his. "That's a sad thing, but I believe you can find it again." He turned, meeting her gaze. In that instant, Adrian was no longer the proud CEO, but a man longing to be real. His voice trembled slightly. "Clara, I don't know exactly what this is, but I can't deny it anymore." She didn't answer, only let her hand remain in his. And that night, they stayed together. It wasn't possession, it was trust. For Adrian, it was the first time in years that life felt truly alive. But closeness also brought its trials. Another evening, as they talked, Clara spoke passionately about her dream of building sustainable communities for working families. Adrian listened, but under the weight of his world, words escaped him. "You don't understand. My world is ruthless. Everyone wants something. You work at a cafe, rent a small place on the outskirts. You don't know that kind of pressure." Clara froze. The words cut deep. She rose, her eyes shining. "You're right. I don't belong in your world. And maybe I never will." Realizing the wound he'd opened, Adrian rushed to her side. "Clara, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I'm just used to fixing everything with money." Clara looked at him, her voice breaking but firm. "But not every problem can be solved with money. I don't need to be taken care of, Adrian. I need to be respected." The grand penthouse fell into a heavy silence, and for the first time in years, Adrian felt real fear. Not of losing a deal or a project, but of losing the only person who made him want to be better than he was. The heavy silence from that night in the penthouse lingered into the next day. Adrian buried himself in work, yet Clara's words echoed relentlessly. "I don't need to be taken care of. I need to be respected." Late in the afternoon, a short message appeared on his phone. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., my mother's place in Oakland. If you want to understand me, start there. He read it again and again, just an address, but to him, it felt like an invitation to step outside his world and into one he had never belonged to. The next evening, at exactly 7, Adrian stood before an old apartment building in Oakland. In his hands were white chrysanthemums and a bottle of red wine. He had closed billion-dollar deals without flinching, yet now his palms felt slightly damp. The door opened. Clara stood there, hair tied back, wearing a simple dress. Seeing him, her lips curved softly. "You came. You thought I wouldn't." Adrian managed to smile. "I thought you'd overthink it and walk away." They both laughed quietly, easing the tension. Clara led him inside, up to a modest third-floor apartment. The space was simple, yet full of warmth. Family photos lined the walls, potted plants sat on the balcony, and the scent of stew filled the air. From the kitchen emerged a petite woman with silver-streaked hair and kind, bright eyes. "You must be Adrian?" She smiled, extending her hand. "Call me Elena." Adrian bowed his head slightly, offering the flowers. "It's an honor to meet you." "Oh, these are beautiful. Thank you." Elena placed them in a vase, then turned to her daughter. "Clara, help me set the table, will you?" Adrian was invited to sit at an old wooden table polished by years of use. Elena brought out a steaming pot of stew and a few simple dishes. During dinner, the conversation flowed gently. Elena asked about his family. Adrian spoke slowly. "My father passed away long ago. My mother lives up north, but we rarely see each other." Elena nodded knowingly. "Then you understand how precious a peaceful home can be." The words struck deeper than he expected. He listened as Elena shared stories of Clara as a child, building cardboard houses, believing that a home could hold dreams. Clara blushed but smiled, pride flickering in her eyes. Adrian realized then, here, there were no chandeliers, no expensive furniture, yet there was connection, love, the very warmth his penthouse lacked. After dinner, Clara led him to the small balcony where pots of mint, rosemary, and lavender grew. She settled into a plastic chair, pointing toward the street below. "This is where I hide whenever life feels too much. What about you? Where do you hide?" Adrian gave a rueful smile. "In the penthouse. But no, it's really behind spreadsheets and projects. You were right. It's just running away." Clara studied him, then nodded gently. "At least tonight you're not hiding." He turned to her, his eyes stripped of pretense. "Tonight I'm not, because I think I've found something I've been missing all along." The city outside kept humming, but on that small balcony there were only two people, and a closeness neither had expected, yet both quietly welcomed. After dinner at Clara's mother's home, Adrian drove back to the city. Streetlights flickered past the window, yet his mind wasn't in the glittering districts anymore. Elena's words, the simple table filled with laughter, Clara's gentle touch on the balcony, all of it lingered, unsettling him in ways he couldn't ignore. For years, he had built shining towers and profitable projects, but for the first time, Adrian began asking himself, what does all of this really mean? Who is it for? And have I lost myself in the process? A few days later, in the boardroom on the 45th floor of Hale Corporation, Adrian sat at the head of the table. Around him were financial directors, lawyers, and a group of Japanese and American investors. On the screen, the Soma Luxury Tower glowed with projections, a 14% annual return, numbers that thrilled the room. This project, the CFO concluded, We'll deliver record profits. If we commercialize the ground floor, the margin will be even higher. All eyes turned to Adrian, awaiting his approval. He flipped through a few pages, then paused. When he looked up, his voice was clear but calm. What if, instead of a luxury tower, we used that land for affordable housing? The room froze. A Japanese investor frowned. "Mr. Hale, surely you're joking." "I'm not," Adrian replied steadily. Another executive snapped, "Adrian, we can't sacrifice profits for personal ideals. This is business, not charity." Adrian's gaze swept the table. Business does not erase responsibility. We aren't just building glass walls. We're building a city. And this city isn't a casino for the elite. It needs homes for real people. The silence grew heavy. Some faces tightened. Others shook their heads. Adrian knew this choice might cost him allies, even funding. But for the first time in years, he felt his words carried genuine weight. That afternoon, Adrian drove to Stanford, where Clara was in the architecture library. Through the glass, he saw her bent over her drawings, sunlight falling across her hair. He tapped lightly. Clara looked up, surprised, then smiled. "What are you doing here?" she asked as he stepped inside. "Came to find you," Adrian said simply. They sat together outside on a worn stone bench. Adrian told her everything about the meeting, the resistance, the silence, the stand he had taken. "I want to start again," he said, his voice low but unwavering. "I want to build projects with real value, and I don't want to do it alone." Clara was quiet for a moment. The breeze lifted a few golden leaves between them. "Are you sure? This won't be an easy road." "I've never been more sure," Adrian said, eyes steady, sincerity burning through. "You reminded me why I began. Now I want to continue. But with you." Clara drew a slow breath, then nodded. In the golden afternoon, she whispered, "Then, where do we start?" Adrian clasped her hand, strong, though trembling slightly. "With a dream and a blueprint." Autumn came to San Francisco, the sky painted gold, leaves drifting softly in the wind. In that season, Adrian and Clara began their first journey together. No million-dollar contracts, no glittering towers, just a small plot of land on the outskirts, long abandoned. Adrian stood beside Clara on the barren ground, surrounded by crumbling walls and piles of refuse yet to be cleared. He unfolded a rough sketch, his voice steady but weighted with meaning. "I want this to be housing for working families, affordable, functional, but above all, dignified. I don't want it to be just another project. I want it to be a home." Clara paused, then took the sketch. Her eyes lit, catching the golden sunlight. "We can do more. Not just apartments. Think of a small park, a playground for children, a common space where neighbors connect. A housing complex shouldn't just be a place to sleep. It should be where people feel they belong." Adrian looked at her, a faint tremor in his chest. "She sees what I once saw, but forgot." He smiled softly. "I thought I had vision, but you always see further than I do." Clara laughed gently, folding the sketch. "Then you'd better keep up." In the days that followed, they dove headfirst into the work. Adrian leveraged his experience and connections to secure permits, reaching out to investors willing to support a project with modest returns. Time and again, he heard cold refusals. Not profitable enough. But unlike before, he didn't back down. Meanwhile, Clara gathered her peers at Stanford, turning ideas into detailed designs. Her small studio glowed late into the night, its tables crowded with papers, laptops, and half-drunk cups of coffee. Adrian often sat quietly beside her, watching. Once, as Clara sketched with fierce focus, Adrian murmured, "When I see you working, you remind me of my father. He could spend an entire day building a single chair, just to make sure it was strong enough for the person who'd sit on it." Clara set her pencil down, meeting his gaze. "Maybe I'm like him in believing a home isn't just material. It's hope." Adrian smiled. In that moment, he realized joy wasn't in the final result. It was in building something together. On the day construction began, Adrian and Clara stood on site at dawn. Hammers rang, mixers churned, dust clung to their shoes. Clara laughed, brushing dirt from his cheek with her hand. "See? From an abandoned lot, it's becoming a place people will call home." Adrian looked around. The workers, sweaty but smiling, children peeking curiously nearby. His throat tightened. "I thought I'd lost this feeling. But now, I know I've found it again." Clara slipped her hand into his. No words were needed. Amid the clamor of machines and the haze of dust, Adrian understood. Their love, like this project, was rising from the ground, brick by brick, steady and hopeful. The first walls of the affordable housing project rose steadily, a living testament to a new beginning. Clara often stayed late at the site, sketchbook in hand, jotting notes as she imagined courtyards filled with children's laughter. Adrian stood nearby, feeling, for the first time in years, at peace. One evening, as the setting sun painted the site in gold, Adrian approached, a small box in hand. His heart pounded harder than in any million-dollar negotiation. "Clara," he whispered. She looked up, surprised by the solemnity in his eyes. Adrian opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring with a hand-cut stone. Not extravagant, not flashy, but radiant with sincerity. "I don't just want to build houses," he said slowly, steadily. "I want to build a life. With you. Will you say yes? Not just to love, but to building something meaningful for the world with me?" Clara froze, tears rising. She whispered, "Yes, yes, I will." Adrian wrapped her in his arms, and in that moment, applause broke out from nearby workers. Someone shouted, "Congratulations!" Children ran around laughing, their joy filling the air. Clara laughed through her tears, while Adrian whispered, "From now on, we're not just building homes for others, we're building our own." Months later, when the project was finally complete, a small wedding was held by the San Francisco Bay. No fireworks, no extravagance, just golden sunlight, sea breeze, and rows of simple white chairs. Clara wore a plain white dress with a sprig of lavender in her hair. Adrian, in a navy suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. Among the guests were Clara's mother, Elena, Sophie, and Daniel, friends who had witnessed the journey. And at the back row, a silver-haired woman quietly took her seat. Adrian froze, then walked toward her. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, his voice trembling. His mother's eyes softened. "I wasted too many years thinking success was enough. Today, I just want to see you happy." Adrian embraced her, awkwardly at first, then tighter, as if to erase the distance of years. The ceremony was simple, yet warm. When the vows were spoken, Adrian squeezed Clara's hand and whispered so only she could hear, "I promise, this isn't just the beginning of us. It's the beginning of something greater." The celebration afterward wasn't held at a luxury hotel, but at their very first affordable housing complex. The shared courtyard was strung with lights, tables set with simple food. New residents mingled with guests, children darting between chairs as music and laughter filled the air. Sophie raised her glass, smiling. This isn't just a wedding. It's proof that love can transform a man, even a city. Clara embraced her mother, whispering, "Thank you for teaching me to believe in homes with a soul." Adrian stood in the crowd, watching Clara glow as she spoke with the families. For the first time, he didn't feel the triumph of a CEO, but the fulfillment of a man who had found meaning. He lifted his gaze to the lit windows above, hearing the laughter of children. This is the legacy I want to leave, Adrian thought. Not cold towers, but places alive with hope and love. And amidst the music, the laughter, and the light of the new community, Adrian clasped Clara's hand tighter, knowing they had begun a journey that could change not just themselves, but the world around them. That night, after the simple wedding celebration at the affordable housing complex, Adrian and Clara returned to their modest Bernal Heights apartment. No luxury, no expensive furniture, but every detail carried warmth. A vase of lavender on the table, a framed photo of their laughter, a few pots of greenery on the balcony. Adrian sank into an old wooden chair, exhaling deeply. "I used to think happiness came with power and status," he said, eyes drifting to the moonlight spilling through the window. "But here, with you, I finally understand what peace really feels like." Clara smiled, sitting beside him, slipping her hand into his. "That's what home is, Adrian. Not glass walls or contracts, but a place filled with love and someone waiting for you." He turned, kissed her forehead gently, his heart swelling with gratitude. This is the true beginning, he thought. Months later, on a late spring afternoon, Clara called Adrian out to the balcony. Her eyes shone with both joy and hesitation as she placed his hand on her belly. "Adrian," her voice trembled with happiness, "we're having a baby." For a moment, he froze, then his eyes lit up, his heart pounding wildly. He pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Are you serious?" "Clara, I've never felt so blessed." Dropping to his knees, he kissed her stomach, his voice breaking. "Hello, little one. I promise to love you with everything I am." Clara laughed through tears, stroking his hair. "You're going to be an amazing father." Adrian looked up, eyes shimmering. "No, we're going to be amazing parents. You taught me how to love, and I want our child to grow in that love." A year later, in their small apartment, Clara sat by the window, cradling a newborn boy in her arms. The baby, with Adrian's brown eyes, slept peacefully. Adrian sat beside them, resting his hand gently on his son's back. "What should we name him?" Clara whispered. Adrian looked from his son to Clara. "Eli. If it weren't for Daniel, we never would have met. I want him to carry that name, to remind us that everything began with a single, fateful encounter." Clara smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. She kissed the baby's forehead. "Eli, it's perfect." Outside, the laughter of children echoed from the affordable housing complex, mingling with birdsong and rustling leaves. Adrian gazed at the glowing city, then back at Clara and Eli, his heart brimming with a peace he had never known. "This is home," he whispered. "Not cold towers, but a place filled with love, hope, and a new beginning." Clara rested her head on his shoulder, her voice soft. "And that will be Eli's inheritance. Not just buildings, but the belief that love can change a person, maybe even the world." Adrian held them close, overcome by a serenity that felt eternal. He knew his long search for meaning had finally led him here, to a humble home where he truly belonged.